Exploring perfectionism. Perfectionism has always been an interesting subject for me because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I love to present and I love to present a perfect thesis on this subject, but I was going to say, unfortunately, this thesis has yet to be discovered. Instead, I'm going to offer you some half-cooked thoughts about perfectionism as a kind of starting point for your own exploration. In fact, to present a work in progress as I'm doing here is really a turnaround for me, for my own perfectionistic tendencies. And it feels quite freeing to share my unpolished thoughts. So here we go. What is the difference between perfection and perfectionism? I love discovering elements of perfection in life, such as the perfect beauty of the viola flowers, which I show in the actual article, and the ladybug on them. There's a perfection in that. I took that photo years ago, and as I explore the world, I often find that certain things bring me great joy, whether it's their beauty, their efficiency, their elegance, their effectiveness. Some things just amaze me, and I would say they're like perfect. I say it's like I'm discovering some laws of nature, or they're jewel-like, they're optimal, attractive, and seeing this kind of perfection brings joy. So the only issue is that I tend to get attached to that kind of perfection. I like that feeling of seeing perfection and seeing that and feeling that joy that comes with it. And so those amazing elements of life become good and everything else becomes not good enough. That's what can happen as I start moving from perfection into perfectionism. This also applies to my own efforts. When I accomplish something that I deem to be good or perfect, or do a really good job, then I'm happy with myself. When I fail to accomplish this, when I don't reach that jewel-like state or this optimal version, then I'm not completely satisfied. It's a less happy feeling. And while I'm in the process of doing something good or trying to do something good, trying to get to an endpoint that I think is going to be perfect, then the result is a feeling of tension inside of me because I don't know if I'm going to succeed or not. I have to try really hard and it's stressful. So perfectionism seems to rest in my attachment to good things. It's not that the good things themselves are the problem, it's my attachment to those things that makes it stressful. I've basically divided the world into good and bad. I want to be a part of the good and the perfect, and I don't want to be a part of the not good or not good enough. And so now I'm only happy when things are going, when I've arrived at some perfect state. So realistically, it's like I've divided the world into 1%, which is perfect, and 99%, which is not good enough. Like those rare moments when things just are like so perfect, it's probably like 1%, depending on how you look at it. And so this becomes kind of a desperate state of affairs because it means that I can only relax when that small percentage of life shows up, which is that jewel-like appearance. Perfectionism for me is my attachment to what I consider good, best, amazing, etc. This gives an angle, though, for me to do the work on it. If I question my thinking on the statement, this is good, or this is ideal, this is the optimal outcome, and I question that, this is the optimal outcome, is it true? Or that would be ideal, is it true? Then as I go through the process of doing the work of Byron Katie and questioning my thinking, I may start to expand my mind and I may start to see that not getting that thing might be as good or better, or that particular outcome may not be the ideal. And so I start to open to other possibilities for finding perfection. Again, perfection can be found literally anywhere, but I only tend to call it perfection when it's when it's according to some really particular criteria. So doing the work expands my version of what perfection looks like, and I may start to see perfection in things that I was considering previously to be not good enough. So it's a matter of redefining good or perfect. If I can see how not getting what I want is as good as getting what I want, then I'm free. If I can find that every stage of life is good, then there's much less attachment to one particular idealized stage. Everything is born, everything grows, everything dies. Why would youth be considered the only perfect state? Can I see the perfection in death? Can I see the perfection in old age? Can I see the perfection in the aging process? This kind of opening of the mind is amazing, and this comes through questioning your thinking, which is what we do when we use this process of the work of Byron Katie. So takeaway number one from this line of reasoning is this. If I want to do the work on perfectionism, let me identify what I'm attached to, some idealized good, and let me question my thought. I want that. I need that. Or question, this is good, this is best, this is optimal, or this is not good enough if I'm looking at something that isn't in that category. So questioning along these lines, that I need it, that I want it, or that it is good, can open things in a new direction. So here's another thought around perfectionism. I've kind of come to think there's a certain laziness in perfectionism. It's kind of a funny idea, but what I notice is that it's often my motive to do something perfectly so that I never have to do it again. And this is not a bad thing either. I like to do things well, and many times I don't have to do them again because I've done it well. But I can get attached to this idea as well, and then this becomes perfectionism. As you can see, the theme coming in is the attachment to these good things, these good outcomes, these good things is what makes it stressful. The attachment is where it starts to become perfectionism. So I pile a lot of value on doing it right because I believe that doing it right will finally liberate me from all doing in this area. This is that laziness I mean. The thoughts I could question, of course, could be something like, I want to be done with this, or I can't relax until this is done. Or if I do this perfectly, I won't have to do it again. And kind of at the bottom of them all is something like this. I don't like doing this. I mean, that can be radical to question. Like some job, which I think if I do a really good job, I'll never have to do it again. What I'm really believing is I don't even really like doing this. So, but is that even true? When I question it, I may find that I actually do like doing that, and it allows me to just enjoy the process instead of worrying about whether I get to a particular outcome or not. So this sentence again, I don't like doing this, is a really cool one because the implication of perfectionism is that the goal is better than the process. Who would I be without that story? If I do something because I love to do it, then who cares if I reach some endpoint or not? There's a lot of freedom in that. So let me question, I want the goal. I just want the, let me question, I just want the goal. I don't like taking the steps. I mean, that's just the essence of this whole thing. And let me turn it around to, I just like taking the steps. I don't care about the goal. It's a turnaround. So these are the things to play with if you're wanting to do the work on perfectionism. Okay, here's another thought around the idea of perfectionism, and that is perfectionism as an attempt to control others. There's an inherent joy in doing things well, but if I feel like I must do things well, then there's an inherent pressure as well. How does a natural, unstressed desire to do something well become a stressed attachment to doing it well? For me, there's often a deeper motive in play. Often, I don't just want to do something well, I want to do something well so that I gain the respect of someone else. Or more importantly, I want to do something well to avoid someone's criticism or disapproval. This is a big one. These are powerful movers in my mind and emotions. And when they're at play, doing a good job at something is just a means to an end, getting approval and avoiding disapproval. And this is what creates the push inside of me to do it perfectly. This is when it becomes stressful, really stressful. And I find that avoiding disapproval is really more the driver than trying to get approval. It's the avoiding the disapproval that is more stressful for me. If my motive for doing something well is to get approval, I will certainly feel pressure to do it well. And it sort of loses the fun of doing something like in a free way. But on the other hand, if I try to avoid disapproval, then it becomes true perfectionism in the worst sense of the word. To avoid disapproval requires that there are zero flaws in my work. It must be seen as having zero flaws from every side as well. And I have to spend a lot of time imagining how the other person or people would see it and make sure that it will look perfect for him or her. So I have to spend a lot of time outside of my own business, outside of myself, looking around and trying to optimize something from every point of view. And that's a lot of work and can be a lot of stress. And this becomes even harder if I'm trying to please a group of people. Now I have to think of every possible objection and every possible need and do the job so that it offends no one and pleases everyone. Literally an impossible task. So let's talk a little bit about doing the work on disapproval, because this is kind of one of the key concepts that's coming up here. I really think this is a big piece of it, maybe really close to the core of what makes perfectionism stressful for me. What makes it toxic is this constant need to do the impossible, to always please everyone. And I say everyone because even one negative remark can destroy everything for a perfectionist. This requires hypervigilance and tireless work. And even if you're doing good work, you're never secure. 1,000 likes means nothing if there's one dislike. To do the work on disapproval is fairly straightforward. Basically, I'll write a judge your neighbor worksheet, and I'll write that worksheet on the person whose disapproval I fear. So on the worksheet, I'll write my wants, my needs about that person, and all of my stressful thoughts. And when I question them, I may see through some of these attachments. What I love about the work of Byron Katie is that it points me in a direction where if I go with it and really start to explore it, it often starts to loosen my attachments because I'm looking at things from very different points of view. And that's exciting. Ironically, perfectionism at its core has little to do with doing a good job or being a good person or having the perfect whatever. It has to do with the belief that what someone else thinks about me is more important than my own experience. When I put them above me in this way, my motive in doing things well or being perfect is to prevent that disapproval, which I believe I can't handle, or to gain their approval. That's why one of my favorite exercises after doing the work on such beliefs is to show up with my affairs half done, to show up kind of sloppy sometimes. It's a turnaround for people like me who have these perfectionistic tendencies. It's not that I don't value doing things well, it's that I'm always trying to do things well. So to not do them well is like, it just gives me permission to relax. It's just freeing not to have to always present things perfectly. And the more I show up that way, the more I realize that I don't need or even want approval, and that disapproval is not so scary as I thought. And I start to enjoy the process of doing things that I love to do, because basically I do have a lot of interests. I do find things fascinating and I do love to do them. So if I take off the attachment of getting somewhere or getting someone's approval or avoiding their approval, I'm free to actually enjoy this exploration of life And that can mean creativity, that can mean learning, that can be so many aspects to just living that make any project interesting in and of itself, instead of something that I'm doing with this little hidden motive of avoiding disapproval or getting approval. So I invite you to identify who you are afraid of disappointing and write a worksheet and do the work. Let's come back to doing things simply because we like to do them. And here's a quote from Byron Katie, the founder of the Work of Byron Katie, from her book, I Need Your Love, Is It True? Great book, by the way. I highly recommend it. Anxiously focusing on the other person, checking for approval or disapproval, leaves nobody at home in yourself. Nobody noticing your thoughts or taking responsibility for your feelings. This cuts you off from the source of real contentment. The outward focus also leaves unnoticed and unquestioned the inevitably painful thought that if you have to transform yourself to find love and approval, there must be something wrong with the way you are.